The Builder's Antiquity is a 30-minute game for 2 to 4 players where you command a group of workers building ancient structures. Make the most of your resources and assign the right workers to construct your buildings. Build the most impressive buildings in this resource management game. When you take a turn in The Builder's Antiquity, you can take 3 free actions. Additional actions can be purchased for 5 coins. The 5 types of actions are start construction, recruit a worker, send a worker to a site, take coins, and make an investment. Any action can be taken multiple times per turn, except for investment, which can only be at most once per turn. To start construction, choose a building from the 5 building cards in the line and place it in front of you. Immediately replace the spot in the line with the next card from the building deck. You can have multiple buildings under construction. To recruit a worker, choose a worker from the 5 worker cards in the line and place it in front of you. Immediately replace the spot in the line with the next card from the worker deck. To send a worker to work, place one of your available workers next to a building under construction so that the resources the worker produces matches with the resources required to complete the building. When a worker is sent to work, pay the cost in the top right of the card. That worker remains with the building until it is completed. If more workers are needed, line their resources up with the previous workers. Sending a worker to a building costs 1 action. If you send an additional worker to the same building, the second worker requires 2 actions, for a total of 3 actions. A third worker sent to the same building costs 3 actions, for a total of 6 actions, and so on. However, if you send a worker to a different building, that only costs 1 action. To take coins, take a number of coins from the bank according to the number of actions you spend on this option. 1 action earns 1 coin, 2 actions earn 3 coins, and 3 actions earn 6 coins. Silver coins are worth 1, and gold coins are worth 5. To make an investment, choose an investment from the investment line and pay its cost. You can only acquire 1 investment per turn. There are 4 types of investments: prisoners, tools, loans, and education. Prisoners have a fixed cost of 7 coins, which you immediately give to the bank. You can choose from any prisoner available. At first, a prisoner is unfreed, which means you don't have to pay them to go to work. However, they cannot be educated or use tools until they are freed. And they will also cost you a victory point at the end of the game. At any point during your turn, or during the final score tally, you can spend an action to free a prisoner. If this is done during the final score tally, you must pay 5 coins per prisoner to free them. Once a prisoner is freed, flip its card over. It is now treated like any worker, and must be paid to go to work, but can also equip tools and become educated. Tools have a fixed cost of 2 coins, which you immediately give to the bank. Pick one of the tool cards available and place it in front of you. From now on, when you send a worker to work, you can equip them with that tool for free, which adds its resource to the worker's resources. A worker can only have 1 tool at a time. When the building is complete, the tool becomes unequipped and can be used again. Loans immediately provide you 10 coins, but cost 15 to repay. If you can't pay them back at the end of the game, you lose 2 victory points each. Education has a fixed cost of 7 coins, which you immediately give to the bank. Choose any available university card and immediately place it on top of a worker who is not currently working on a building. That worker's resources are updated to the new resource level without changing the cost of sending it to work. This card stays on the worker till the end of the game. You can only educate a worker once. Once a player has decided to stop taking actions, play moves to the next player. When the sum of resources of all workers on a building is equal to or more than the resources required from the building is complete. The workers and tools used on the building are available to use again on other buildings, and you earn coins according to the number on the front of the building card. Then flip your building over and add it to your finished buildings. The victory points are added together at the end of the game. Certain buildings are called machines, which are used like workers that don't require payment. When you complete one, add it to your available workers. Don't forget to add their victory points at the end of the game. If a player has 17 or more victory points worth of buildings and machines, then the end of the game is triggered. Any player who has not yet had a turn in the last round each takes a final turn, so that each player has an equal number of turns for the game. When the game ends, each player has a chance to free their prisoners and pay back their loans. Then each player adds the total victory points from buildings and machines, as well as 1/10 of a point for each coin still in their possession. They then subtract a victory point per unfreed prisoner and 2 victory points per unpaid loan. The player with the most points wins. In case of a tie, players share in the victory. To start a game of the Builder's Antiquity, shuffle the building cards and place the deck face up on the table. Place the top 5 cards in a line next to the deck. Randomly deal each player an apprentice worker and shuffle the remaining apprentices into the worker deck. Place the shuffled worker deck face up below the building deck and place the top 5 cards in a line next to the deck. Place the investment line above the buildings line, the 6 prisoners, the 4 tools, the 4 loans, and the 4 universities. Place the coins in the middle to form a bank. Each player starts with 10 coins. Randomly choose a starting player and give them the first player card. War Games Explained, and that's how to play the Builder's Antiquity.